Welcome to episode 417 of Get Paid for Your Pet. We are your hosts, Jasper Rivers and Eric Muller. And today we are talking about how you should buy an Airbnb business instead of starting one.
That's right.
How does that sound?
You know what? If you talked to me 6 months ago about that concept, I would have kind of challenged you a bit on that business model. But now that we've actually done it and we're watching the trends, and we found the opportunities in this space, man, that sounds amazing. I'm super excited about that. So how's that sound for you?
Yeah, no, to me, it makes a lot of sense, actually. Why build something new if you can just buy something that already exists?
That's right. Yeah. Starting a business from the ground up is extremely challenging, as we know.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. To tell you the truth, I have a friend who focuses on buying businesses and then increasing the profits and then selling them again. That's all he does. And I've always wondered, like, it seems such a mysterious thing for me. Like, how do you buy a business and then and improve it and so that you can sell it? It sounds pretty interesting, but also I had no idea how to do it either.
Well, dude, I mean, we're experiencing that right now, right? Like, we just bought this business in Idlewild. I'm rocking the shirt, Idlewild, California. We just bought this business, and just by implementing a handful of very basic systems, some new marketing and some pricing tools, we've increased the profit on this property within the first 2 weeks of owning the property, right? Owning the business. It's kind of crazy.
It is for
right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then even finding like the cleaning and the maintenance and the costs right there, we're like, wow, we can save a lot of money on operations while increasing the experience for guests. And this has nothing to do with, like, we haven't even we were talking this morning. We haven't even started focusing on our actual real revenue management, path for this property. This is all just basic stuff. So I think if you get really good at understanding business as a whole, if you understand how business works, how people work, you can find these opportunities moving into people's existing business where you see the value, and just by tweaking a couple of levers, you can have a massive result there. So, but yeah, let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about how, the opportunity right now is that we believe is not starting an Airbnb business, but buying one.
Yeah, for sure. So we've gotten a lot of questions from people, because obviously there's a lot of people that agree with us that there's this big opportunity, and people want to know a little bit about how do you do this? How do you actually raise the money? How do you find that property? And what does the process look like, right? We're actually taking over an entire business. So let's dive in, and starting with the investors. I know you've worked with investors for a long time, right? For me, this is kind of like the first experience of working with an investor. I think you have experience with that.
Yeah. Before we go into that, I just want to state, because we do teach a lot of people how to start businesses from the ground up. So we're kind of joking about the whole thing of not starting an Airbnb business, but buying one. I think if you're in a position to buy a existing Airbnb business, and that's something that you're looking to do, there's a massive opportunities there. And obviously this is our first official, air quote, Airbnb business, short-term rental business that we purchased. We've started multiple short-term rental businesses from the ground up. So I just don't want to turn everybody off with that. So just wanted to make that clarity. Obviously, there's a ton of opportunity of starting your own short-term rental management company or investment company. But if you can find those, and this is where I think all of our experience in the short-term rental space of running our own short-term rentals, teaching hundreds of people on how to start and scale short-term rental companies around the world, is coming together with the opportunity, my background. So this answers your question, my background of real estate investing. Like, it's finally merged. And it took 4.5 years for me to get to this point where I'm like, okay, now I see the biggest opportunity that excites me the most to merge real estate investing with short-term rentals. Yeah. So my background, just for, for everybody and for you too, is like my background. I got into real estate investing at 17 years old. So, long story short, I grew up in the construction industry. My father, all my uncles, everybody from my town was, I grew up in a blue collar town. So everyone was working with their hands. So I grew up working on construction job sites. My dad had a construction company on the weekends, so I would work on the houses with him on the weekends. And then that led to me in high school going to a trade high school in North Bergen, New Jersey, called CAS Prep. And where I went half the week for regular high school academics and then half the week for construction. So they taught me carpentry and construction, how to run job sites, that whole thing. During that, while I was in high school, I was introduced to Rich Dad Poor Dad. So my teacher, Frank, my construction teacher, who I'm still good friends with, gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad. And he's like, hey, man, you got to read this. Cause I started like exploring and asking questions about business and all this stuff. Where everybody else that I was going to the program with wanted to get a job. I wanted to start my own business. I just didn't know what that was yet. So long story short, I knew that I wanted to go into real estate, develop my own real estate. And that was the path I started going on. So Frank got me a job working for a real estate investor. And I was her, laborer, just running stuff back and forth at 17. But she started teaching me the power of OPM, other people's money, right? So how anybody with a good plan, a good vision can attract in individuals with money who are looking to invest it in a place to earn a good return, but also invest in people that they truly believe in. So at the age of 18, so from 17 to 19, I got into the carpentry union. And for about 2.5 years, I was going through an apprenticeship, really learning construction at a high level of doing construction and carpentry myself, but then also running a big job site. And that was just me kind of studying from afar. So at 19 is when I convinced a local bank to lend me and my father money, 110% financing. This was before the crash. And that's what caused the crash, is that they were giving out 110% financing to everybody. So we bought our first property in town. I moved into the basement and I was doing carpentry during the day, renovating the property at night. And we flipped that property, made some money. We bought some more properties, so on and so forth. So fast forward that, I studied how to raise money through investors, right? Because I'm like, to buy real estate, we need money. We need a lot of money. Banks are very difficult to get cash from, right? So still with me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. My internet might be breaking up over here, so I apologize. So I started studying OPM, other people's money, and how to leverage other people's money to buy real estate and develop my own wealth while paying interest. So before I moved out to California, I raised millions of dollars through private investors to acquire real estate for short-term use, renovate it, flip it, pay them back their money. Then I started getting into apartment buildings, all of that. So fast forward to where we're at now, I'm taking the same approach. We're just giving them a different type of opportunity here. We have them investing in the bigger picture versus individual properties. So we could break all that down. But the biggest lesson that I learned in raising money is it all is based on your network, right? At the end of the day, it's all based on your network. And we can go deeper into that.
Yeah, they say it's your net worth is your network.
100%. Every single investor I've ever worked with has come through my direct network. And I think that is a fair statement for most investors, individual investors that are raising money to buy property. Once you get bigger into REITs and you start developing funds, then you have to actually work to get investors to come to you and convince them to invest with you. Where, what we're doing with Free Wild is a perfect example, right? We have a couple of investors that have been watching what we're doing for the last couple of years. And we had the opportunity to show them our ability of running a business and being experts in this industry. Two is then we had the opportunity to introduce to them the bigger vision of what we're creating with Free Wild, and the opportunity of doing building a really cool brand with really cool real estate all around the world. Like, we have the ability to do that, and we will do that over the next few years, right? So investors with money, and you could touch on this a little bit too, because you have a better relationship with our first investor here. Investors with money, they get to a certain point where, yes, they're looking for a return. I just learned recently about the rule of 7. Do you know this rule in the investment world?
No.
Okay. So I had a really good friend just sell a big portion of his company, and he made a lot of money. A lot of money through this deal. And I was asking him I'm like, dude, what do you do with all this cash now? Because you go from essentially working on a business, and the next day you have hundreds of millions of dollars in your account. He's like, I don't ever have to work again. What we have to do, if I can earn a 7% return on my cash every 7 years, my cash doubles. That's why the rich get richer, right? Because they understand how to leverage their money. So he now just has to be an investor and invest in the right people and the right deals with the collective return of a 7%, right? If he can get that, then he's golden for the rest of his life, right? So most investors seek that. They seek good investments that they don't have to be involved in. They're hands off. They invest in people that they trust or like. Trust may come with some time. And they invest in things that can bring them some joy and some excitement. Otherwise, they're investing in some boring stuff, and they have that, but they also want to play in some interesting avenues. We are luckily enough in an incredible industry that attracts a lot of people, not just guests, but also investors. So people that are looking to invest and raise money for their projects, there is an abundant amount of money out there, abundant amount of investors, and we can attract them in there. But there's a handful of things that we have to do to be in a position to bring investors in. So does that all make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And now I remember that rule, the rule of 7. I didn't know it was called the rule of 7, but yeah, essentially if you make 7%, then your money doubles in 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
in 10 years. Yeah. Yeah, I've known about that rule, but yeah, it's interesting because, essentially if you think about it, there's a lot of money in this world, and money is always looking for a return. There's 2 aspects when it comes to investing. There's return and there's risk, right? That's all investors kind of look at. They just look at what's the risk and what's my return, right? So yeah, what I noticed working with our investor is, and we'll dive more into this, but you have to, it all starts with being really, really clear on what you want to achieve, what you want to build, right? And the investor has to get to know you, right? Because the risk is, like, when an investor knows you well and he knows exactly what you're building, then that takes away some of the risk, or at least then the risk becomes like manageable or understandable, right? Versus investing with people that you don't really know and not really being clear on what they're going to do with your money.
Yep. And I'm currently reading Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. This is the 3rd time this year I've read this book, and I just went through, forget the name of the chapter. I think it's chapter 6, where they talk about Warren Buffett, how Warren Buffett made his money, right? And everyone looks at the huge amount of dollars that he has, and everyone's trying to figure out his secret sauce and all these things. And, what's the one thing that Warren Buffett did to become the wealthiest person in the world, right? Or one of the wealthiest people in the world. And what he talks about in the book is how Warren has done really 2 main things. One is he started investing when he was 9 years old. So compound over time is really what brought him his biggest wealth, is compound interest. That's a whole nother podcast we can go into. It's something I've always known. about and thought I was educated on it, but I'm like, man, like now I truly understand the power of it after reading Warren's story. Is like 80% of his wealth or 90% of his wealth was created in the last X amount of years due to compound interest, right? But he's been investing since he was 9. Another thing that he does is he invests across multiple different avenues, right? And there's only a cut. Actually, fast forward to another story. They talk about VC, venture capitalists and how they invest in companies. Is they invest in a ton of different companies, and there's only 2% that get a 20% return or more of their investments, right? They expect 98% of their investments to actually fail, right? So, and the reason why I bring this up is investors, especially these type of investors that we're looking to attract into for FreeWild, is they're looking for a handful of different things. Yes, they want to invest in the right people. They want to invest in something that's cool and fun because they have opportunity to kind of invest in everything. But also they know if they're investing in you, if they're investing in us, the risk of them losing that money is a bit more tolerable because they're investing in the person and the idea, right? And the reason why I bring that up is these investors invest in so many different avenues. Some investments will give them 20% returns. Some investments will be losses, but on average, if they can make a 7% return, then they're okay, right? Like that's what they look for. So this all comes back down to the network. What network do you have surrounding you at all times? Not only giving you advice, but that are watching what you're doing. That's why SDR Legends exists, right? Is the network that we're bringing together for not only for us, but for everybody in that room. Top notch. You have to build that network and be patient with fundraising.
Yeah, and obviously we have a fairly large network, right? Because we're doing podcasts, we're creating educational courses, we send out emails, all of that. But what would your advice be to somebody who's listening right now who thinks, well, I don't have all that stuff, I have an Instagram account, right?
Yeah.
But that's about it. So how do I find these investors if I don't have these larger communication channels?
Awesome. Yeah, great question, man. One is everything that we have done, anybody could do. Anybody can start a podcast. Anybody can start documenting what they're doing in their business on Instagram, all of that stuff, right? What I suggest is don't do everything. Choose one thing and really focus on that for your networking ability. LinkedIn is by far one of the most powerful tools we have in human society to connect with other humans on a professional level. So you can literally find anybody on LinkedIn and connect with them. So at a bare minimum, someone who is not interested in creating a social media following or creating a podcast or anything like that, and they're truly just trying to find investors or high wealth individuals or a network to plug into, I would say LinkedIn is by far the best tools to start developing that network and communicating with people. There's tons of courses out there. If people just look up, LinkedIn networking, I'm sure they can find some. I would just invest in that stuff. But that would be the first step. Is if you're not looking to create anything else, the best way to build your investor network and your network in general is LinkedIn, in my opinion. Number 2 is surrounding yourself with people that are looking for the same thing that you're looking for, doing the same thing that you're looking for. Every single community, especially here in the States, has some type of real estate investment networking group, Airbnb meetups, all that stuff. They may be virtual right now due to the climate that we're in. But start getting involved in those and start sharing what you're doing. Number 3 is be patient in the process. It took you and I nearly a year to kind of put all this stuff together. And yes, we bought one incredible property and we have a ton of work ahead of us. But we still have a ton of work ahead of us when it comes to meeting new investors, because we have a bigger grand vision on what we're doing with FreeWild here. So
yeah, I think the bottom line is you can't sit in your basement and wait for the investors to come to you. You have to get out there and communicate what you're doing with the world, right? Yep. And however you want to do that, you have to start putting yourself out there. I want to tell a quick inspirational story from a friend of mine who I think it was in 2013, he was a lawyer and he wanted to be an entrepreneur. And this goes back to what you were saying, like everything that we are doing, like anybody can do that. And I think that's a really good point. And this guy he wanted to be an entrepreneur. He had no idea how to do that. So what he did is he founded a podcast where he was telling the world how his journey on becoming an entrepreneur, right? So he was documenting what he was learning, and he was doing this in the weekends while he had a lawyer job. Now, his podcast and following grew really, really fast. And before he knew it, that became his business, which is kind of mind-blowing to me, where it's like, oh, you're telling people how you become an entrepreneur. And by doing that actually becomes your business.
Incredible.
Which is I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. Like people right now, they want to connect with you in an authentic way, right? So I think what we try to do, and this is something that you and I from the very beginning connected on, is like, we're going to communicate from a place of us not being experts, but of us being two passionate people in this space that we absolutely love, and sharing the content of what we're learning and what we're doing, our wins, our failures, all of that stuff. Right. So I think people really connect with that. And that's what people are looking for nowadays. So listen, guys, like, it is free. It's possible to go and raise money. You just got to be patient. You have to understand. This is why I love what we teach, especially in Legends X, right? Like helping people develop the management model, right? Because like you can go out and create a short-term rental management company and have cash flow in your bank very, very quickly. In a matter of weeks, you can do that. You can find a property, put it up on Airbnb, and start generating cash flow, right? And now if we implement the right vision, the right systems, and the right way to scale, then we can scale that pretty quick. And if we can cover our basis, if we can bring it, like for talking to the person who's like, hey, I want to go buy real estate. I want to do what you guys are doing, create communities, unique experiences, all this stuff. I need to raise money, but that might take me a year to do that. Well, all right, let's start managing other people's properties, right? We talk about OPM, other people's money, but we could also do the same thing and leverage other people's property, OPP, right? So if we leverage other people's property, that gives us the ability to pay for our lifestyle. We don't need a lot of properties to generate $10,000 a month in the bank, right? And that can change everyone's life, right? $10,000 a month. That gives you the ability to build this vision out, the systems, the process, all of that stuff, and attract in the investors, because you're actually building value for people, right? And you're creating something of value versus just coming with an idea, which plenty of investors just invest in ideas. That happens every single day. But if we're lined up against time, we want to change our, maybe we're in a job that we hate and we want to kind of get out of that. I just spoke to one of our clients we've been working with for about a year and a half. During COVID, his community got hit super, super hard. And he went from like 50 units down to 15 units. Got a bunch of debt, all of that. But he just told me this morning that he went and got a job, working a very high paying hourly job, manual job. And he hired somebody to run his 15 units for him. And he said, just by doing that, because he wanted to pay down his debt, by doing that, removed him from his business, he was able to now start focusing on the higher vision of his company. So yes, he's trading dollars for hours for dollars, because he has a very hard, specific goal, is to pay down some debt that he took on during COVID. But now he also wants to continue growing his company. So by doing that, he was able to attract in a COO into his company to help him scale it. And he has the ability to pay for this person because he has a secondary income coming in. The reason why I bring this up is like, we can leverage short-term rentals, OPP, to start generating that while we're also working on the bigger picture of bringing investors into the pipeline, right? Yeah. That's a really good way of starting it. So we can go into this so many different avenues. I think one good pivot to go into is like talking about why we think buying businesses, and we talked on this on previous podcasts, why buying short-term rentals right now is super powerful. Like if we can figure out how to raise that money and bring that wealth in, and we have the ability to manage the short-term rental side, the operational side, the biggest opportunity in my opinion, is finding these older vacation rental properties and converting them to what we call short-term rental experiences, right? I truly believe that, because we've just noticed it. Just by doing some very basic things on this one property, we dramatically increased the profit on it, right? And we haven't even touched on the renovations. We haven't touched on the designs. We're using their photos. We haven't even brought in a photographer to these properties. We're using their photos, but by just doing a couple of different things, we're dramatically changing the profit here. So I believe that moving into these secondary markets, or finding, even in the traditional vacation rental markets, finding old vacation rental management companies that have access to properties and acquiring those and creating those to modern short-term rental experiences, I think is going to be, one, the next biggest trend in our industry, and two, is going to be the biggest wealth developer in our industry, versus what we saw prior to COVID, which was, let's leverage other people's properties, lease them all out, scale them, and then try to raise a bunch of money and sell those companies. I don't think that's going to happen anymore, outside of a Sonder or something unique. I'm starting to see everyone now leveraging short-term rental management and leveraging that to acquire real estate. I think that's it.
I mean, a lot of the master leasing companies kind of went out of business, and I see it more and more in the last like couple months. I see more and more people are kind of walking away from that model.
Yeah, it's a high risk model. You know, arbitrage only works in a market that's going up, right? Where more and more cities are difficult to run short-term rentals right now. Competition is pretty crazy. So it's like, it's a great model when it works, right? But the challenge is when it doesn't work, you have a lot of debt. And, you know, I'm really curious to see, once we get through the pandemic, if we're going to see some major lawsuits coming into those bigger companies, and those individuals who scale those master lease companies that couldn't hold the leases and broke the leases during COVID. I'm really curious to see if like those bigger REITs are going to go after those master lease companies.
Yeah. That'd be interesting to see. So let's dive into, how do you find, because this is relevant to us as well. Like, how do we find more of these short-term rental businesses, these Airbnb businesses that we can buy? Like, there's no website where you can find these, right?
Yeah, I mean, so it comes down to what we're trying to buy, right? Because like what we're talking about, yeah, you and I are kind of focused on buying communities and land and, you know, multiple structures per unit or per property. But there's also what I'm preaching on here. It also makes sense with single family homes, right? Any type of real estate asset that you can legally run as a short-term rental property, right? I think that will happen. I think that goes across the board. And I think we're going to be doing that too, acquiring smaller single family homes, apartment buildings, hotels, stuff like that throughout the years. Listen, man, it comes down to the same thing, network, right? It's like, it all comes down to network, and this is what we teach in Legends X, right? The last week on how to scale, we introduce our students to the property abundance plan. And in the property abundance plan, it talks about how to create rhythms and habits in your marketing for your company to acquire properties. When I say acquire, I mean, you know, find management deals or find investment deals, right? We have to get in the habit of every single day communicating to the world what we're doing and what we're building, right? Because it's like, yeah, we can go on Zillow, we can go on the MLS. Yes, we could go to Erica Mueller out of Florida. She has a company, Verlio. Yeah, Verlio.com, where she sources vacation rental properties and sells them on an open market, right? Yep. So that's beautiful. You have resources there, but every good investor, and when I was in the investment world, you don't buy properties on the market. We bought this property on the market and we paid top freaking dollar for it, because we can see how we could 2 to 3x the value of the property just by adding some additional units. So that's a rare situation, but it's like, if you know, you got to choose your markets and you got to build those relationships with realtors, brokers, and other business owners in that marketplace that will bring you properties, right? So you have to be in that position of networking. So we talked about this. As soon as we bought this property, I walked into a local coffee shop, started talking to the owner. He's been up there for many years. You know, his kids are running around, like he's part of the community. Told him what we did. And he's like, hey, man, my friend owns this community in this area. And he's been doing it for many years and he wants out. I'm like, is it on the market? He's like, no, he hasn't even gotten to that point. But I guarantee you, if the right person and the right dollar comes to him, he would exit. Boom. Right there, we have an opportunity, right? So it's like we have to network on every single level, right? And we have to communicate with everybody. Because I told him, ordering coffee from him, I told him the whole dream of what we're doing with Free Wild. And he's like, dude, I love that idea. You got to talk to my buddy because here's a good opportunity. Right. So that's how you find these things. And there's really, you can go into all the other marketing, like how to pull lists, how to market to lists, how to do a shotgun approach of sending out letters to homeowners and scraping data off of like websites like Craigslist or VRBO or, you know, the property, you know, here in the States, you have property information is public data.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone has the right to find out who owns what property. That's all public data. So we could scrape that and market it and all that stuff. That's a deeper level. The fastest response, the fastest result will be networking. Guarantee it. That's how I bought every single one of my properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. No, I can see that. I can see how that would work. We did have one of our Legends X graduates who showed us a cool system in the Legends X Alumni Mastermind, yep. Where he's in a very small market, right? So he's really snipering. He's looking at a few properties that he wants. And he went on a website. I can't remember the name of the website, but what you're talking about, like finding public information on who owns a property, reached out to that person, and now he's managing the unit. Right. He checked out Airbnb, noticed that the amount of money that the owner was making wasn't great. Approached him, and he's now managing it. Right. So there's different ways of doing it, but I agree with you. Like the networking and the building relationships part is especially long term. That's the most effective and most sustainable way of doing it.
100%. That's why you got to be patient through the process. Everyone thinks that there's a quick solution to getting to the result as fast as possible. Like, oh, if I only invest in this marketing or whatever it is, I'm going to get this result faster. Our brains always look for the fastest path to the result, right? But from what I've learned over the years, and I've bought a lot of real estate, and now that we're in this process, I'm recognizing what we want to buy. We have to choose our markets carefully. 2 is we have to become part of that community. 3 is we have to ask for the properties, right? We watch big companies like Vacasa move into these secondary markets, and they're marketing to everybody. They're approaching all these companies, trying to buy and buying all of these smaller management companies, all this stuff. But they're so big and they move so freaking fast. They have the ability to spend countless amount of money on marketing and failed approaches, all that stuff. If we're looking to buy one property in a marketplace, and especially if we want to do what we want to do and something unique, we have to get the community. We have to become part of that community. And that's either us or a representative of us in those communities. So for us to expand out, again, like, yeah, we could use all these websites. We could use all these approaches and what I call the shotgun marketing approach, where we kind of send out everything to everyone and hope to find that one person to call us. Or we can be very specific and start networking with the right people that can introduce us to the right people who own the real estate. So in my opinion, that's the best way we're going to scale. Once we put our fund together and we start raising 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars to buy these communities around the country and then eventually around the world, we're obviously going to have to hire a couple of people in-house to go out and build those relationships. But we're going to find our properties more on relationship building than we are on any type of marketing approach that we take.
When are we buying this property that the guy in the coffee shop told you about?
Oh man, we're one step at a time, buddy. I'm going up there. I'm going to be in Ottawa this weekend or this weekend. Yeah, this weekend. So we're going to go visit that and see if that makes sense. So
yeah, I can't wait until I'm able to actually go to Ottawa and spend some time
yeah,
there.
dude.
Because we're managing all these units. I've never actually been there.
I know, it's pretty awesome, right? Yeah, it's cool that you get to, be able to be on that back end. That's what makes this business so beautiful. But yeah, dude, it's gonna be incredible. I can't wait to start expanding that location and then finding some additional locations like Lake Arrowhead, which is a town not too far from Ottawa, Big Bear, and then eventually Tahoe. I think our approach of expanding is and this is something that Erica and Rebecca kind of got in my brain from Hicksville, is the way to expand is not getting a property in Ottawa, then getting a property in Tennessee, and then getting a property in Canada. It's let's move into clusters of towns. And then once we have that locked in, we can move into another location. So that's kind of going to be our approach to it.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because our main client right now is coming from Los Angeles and San Diego.
Yep,
those are really the two main cities where people are traveling to Ottawa from. So it makes sense for us to start our next one in a place where that's within driving distance of those same cities.
That's right.
Right, because then all of the people that would have stayed with us, they'll be like, "Hey, we have our second free route. Let's go check it out."
Yeah. And that's if you're trying to create something unique and you're trying to target the same type of avatar and create a culture, right? And that's a whole nother podcast to go into. But yeah, that's going to be our approach behind it.
Yeah. Awesome. Sweet. I'm excited. This is such exciting times.
Dude, I freaking love it, man. Let's just hope inflation doesn't shoot through the roof anytime soon, and things stay peaceful and the world starts, loving each other a bit more, and we'll be able to continue doing what we're doing. Otherwise, we'll have to continue doing what we're doing during all those challenges. So,
yeah. Well, it's an exciting time for us. Definitely learning a lot. It's kind of crazy because if you look at how busy we were just with overnight success, and then to think that we're taking on a whole new business. But it's interesting. I think as an entrepreneur, you always feel like you have too many things to do that you can handle, and you always think like, oh, when is the time going to be there when I don't have a lot of tasks and I'm not fully busy the whole day? But I think that's just part of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're in the startup phase of now 2 companies, right? Overnight Success has a couple of years now, but Free Wild is from the ground up, right? We haven't even launched, aside from this podcast, we haven't even launched it publicly, and we're still working on the brand, all that stuff. So there's a lot of work that goes into these companies, of course. But I mean, both of us have people in our network who have grown extremely successful companies that are worth hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, and they have the same challenges that we have. There's just different zeros, right? And that's literally all it is. And I think the only time that ever changes is when you move from an entrepreneur to an investor, right? Because then at that time, you control your time and you control where your money is going, and you're investing in the people like us that are doing all the manual labor and all the stuff that goes into it. So, but I feel good, man. Like with the team that we have with Overnight Success, the systems, that company's freaking rocking and rolling. And now with Free Wild, like obviously a huge undertaking of what we're doing, but man, I've never felt so freaking confident of being able to crush it with what we're doing than right now. So feels good, man.
It's good to hear, man. Well, you've been hustling since you were like 17 years old. So
that's right.
To hear that now you're the most confident ever, that's great to hear.
Yeah, dude, it's been a crazy journey. It's been a crazy journey, but I'm giving myself a few more years of this hustle mode, and then create the wealth to become the investor. So, yeah.
Awesome.
That's my goal.
Amen to that. All right. Well, any final words before we wrap it up?
No, that's it. I'm just, again, for everyone who's made it to this far in the podcast, love your support on leaving us a solid review and subscribing to this podcast. That's literally the only way that we can get some feedback and have this podcast grow is by our listeners supporting us. And that's the only way. Talk about our podcast to people, share it with people who you think would enjoy this. Please leave us a review, preferably a good one, and subscribe. We truly, appreciate your support on that.
Yeah, we've been getting some new reviews I saw on the Apple podcast, and the best way to leave us a review is just search for Get Paid for Your Pad on Apple Podcast, and you'll be able to find it and leave us a quick review. So,
yep.
Thanks to people who've already left reviews. We found out that that's a really powerful way for us to reach more people and increase the community. So, thank you for that. All righty. All right, Eric. Well, it's good to see you. And
that's right.
We'll talk soon. To the listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll be back on Monday. See you then.
Peace out, guys.